So I have a completely vertically integrated company with 10,000 apartments and 300 employees. And I run the entire company on 90 minutes a week. So it doesn't start off this way. It starts with one person, always at the front. My girl was Sandy Smith. And when I hired her, she was HR, payroll, accounting, my EA. She took all the phone calls. She did all the letters. It starts with one person. So that was the goal. And then what happens is I started looking at Sandy's capacity. I realized that she was spending over 50% of her time on accounting. So I hired an accountant. That was my second employee because I wanted to free up Sandy because Sandy was helping me grow the business. So it's important to understand that at each juncture, you don't have to have everything figured out. In fact, you just have to have a goal. So the first goal for us was just to buy 1,000 units. And then the second goal was to buy 4,000 units. And then the third goal was to buy 10,000 units. So each time that we did that, we needed a new set of people. For example, let's say our first goal was 1,000 units. Maybe that's 4 buildings of 250 units each. That's a different set of people. At that time, you don't need all the investors. You just need people that can buy 1,000 units. And of course, you don't need a huge team. But at 4,000 units, let's say I wanted to grow to 4, then you merely just say, I want to grow to 4,000 units in 5 years, let's say, and you just work backwards. So now I got to buy 3,000 more units over the next 5 years. You divide that by the number of years and divide that by the number of quarters. So that's like 750 units a year. So I just need to buy like 3 buildings a year for the next 4 or 5 years to get me to 4,000 units. Then after that, it was 10,000. So you just keep moving your goal. And of course, you don't know what you need until you need it. And so each time you just got to look at the capacity of the reception, of the accounting, of the marketing, of the HR, of all the systems that you have as you grow organically over that time. And then you hire based on the need at the time. So now you can see as you grow, you need HR, you need IT, and of course you need a CFO, a CIO, an office manager. And as you start to see the folks that you need, like here's the office management, director of corp, you need legal, you need investor relations, you need all things HR for the 300 people, which include talent, onboarding, acquisitions. You need philanthropy. We have to have our philanthropy. This came out of our culture. So Lynn's our full-time director of philanthropy. She gives away money to nonprofits. So, and then of course you get into accounting and marketing. As we continue to grow, there are different things that are needed at different times. So this is the management company. This is Lindsay. And this is our COO, Brian, who's not here today because he should be out at the properties. So what happens is as you start to grow, you start to realize the need for different talent at different times. The way our company is broken up is we have the residential management on this side and the asset management on that side. That's generally how we are broken up in this particular office space. So right now we're at 10,000 units and we want to go to 25,000 units. So all you do is say what time period, let's say 10 years. So if you take the 15,000 units that we need in 10 years, you divide it by 10, that's 1,500 units a year. If you break that out by every 90 days, then you can see that we're going to need about 250 to 500 units every single quarter for the next 10 years. And that's doable. When you start to break it down like that, you just need a team that can do singles. All you got to do is buy 1 or 2 buildings a quarter for the year. Then you're getting further and further toward the goal that you set. But everyone has to be on board with the 15,000 unit vision. Different people are important at different times. So in the beginning, for that particular growth, you need acquisitions, you need analysts, you need all of those things. And then as you get into due diligence, you need more on the management side. And then of course, as you close them, it's more legal. And then of course, it's asset management and property management. So there's a sequence to every single deal that you need. And as you grow organically, then you can find out what the capacity is of, let's say, a property accountant or a CFO or HR, and all the things that happen as a result of onboarding more people. So I know that if I buy, let's say 4 or 6 or 8 properties, that might be one accountant, depending on the size, depending on the complexity. If it's a new construction or development, they will probably only be able to do, let's say, 4. But if it's a stabilized deal, they might be able to do 8. So it depends on the person, and it depends on the complexity of the deal itself. But that's super scalable. So for example, while it seems like a lot, if we buy 5 or 6 buildings in 1 year, I probably only need 1 property accountant and 1 property director. And I just drop that into the existing system that we already have in place, because I won't need more people in HR for that. And I won't need additional office staff or anything like that. We just need people that can manage that group of properties. So every great entrepreneur and every great business owner has to soon let go of the vine. In other words, they start off with a deal or concept or a business or whatever it is. Doesn't really matter. And they think, mostly, no one can run it better than them. And so a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners get stuck right here. They don't trust anybody. They don't delegate anything. I think of like dentists or doctors or CPAs or realtors, let's say, where they think everything has to go through them. And what happens is they go from 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. So they're making more money, but their lifestyle sucks. And that's not what you want. What you want is you want that money coming in, and you want to go do what you want. So you know, the business is here to support your lifestyle. It's not here to take away from it, because our most valuable thing is time, for sure. So this is what we call letting go of the vine. So every great system is made up of a core group of basic components. And so once you start to realize that every single business has those 6 basic components, then you can start to break those down and try to figure out what you need to do each of those. And like anything, it's easier to, like people say, how do you eat an elephant? 1 bite at a time. It's the exact same process. You have to break down all the stuff to make it easy for you. So it also could make it easy for anybody else that you hire. So everybody's marching the same direction. So we bought very little properties from 2021 to 2023. The reason was, of course, everyone was buying, the prices were going up, and of course the interest rate went up, which meant cash flow went down. And the only reason we'd want to buy is for cash flow. And so now when I want to spend $1 billion to buy real estate, it's because of the exact opposite. There's less people buying, values are down, interest rates are down. So if you're an investor and want to see some deals that we're currently looking at that you might like, click on the link below. So every business is broken into a core group of basic components. And I believe that these are the 6. And these are straight from EOS process, which we have at our business. But whenever I'm mentoring a company or an entrepreneur, I always break them down to these things, because like anything, things in smaller chunks are easier to manage. Because what happens most of the time, like in vision, for example, does the whole company believe in the vision? Does the whole company buy into the vision? So what happens a lot of times, especially with entrepreneurs and business owners, they don't have a clear direction on their vision. There's no clarity on their vision. And therefore, the people, even the receptionists, don't understand the vision. And once you have the vision, doesn't matter what it is, it might be starting with 1 store and scaling to 10 within that submarket. That's a vision. Everyone can get behind that, and all of a sudden, the whole corporation is moving that direction. Now, in our company, of course, we're at 10,000 units, and our vision is to grow to 25 in the next 10 years. That's our vision. Everyone has bought into the vision. Everyone on site understands the vision, from the receptionist to the accountant to the property directors to the CFO, the CIO, the COO. Everybody in the company is bought into the vision. Everybody agrees on the vision. And so each time that we have a company meeting, quarterly or annually, we bring up the vision. Are we on track or off track with the vision? So everybody understands we're headed that direction. And why that's important is because, well, like you personally need to have goals and a vision, you also have to have one for the company, because this is what attracts really top people. This is what creates culture, which we're going to get into. All of these things start with the founder's vision. The vision of the business gets everyone in the organization seeing the same clear image of where the business is going and how it's going to get there. It sounds easy, but it's not. It needs to be clear. The second one is people. You cannot build a great business without people, period. Great people are needed to build great companies. Great people jump on to vision. So you have to have vision first, and then you attract really good people. So one of the things we do with people is we have what's called an organizational chart. And in EOS, we have just like your org chart or your structure. So the people part is really, really important. Last week, as part of my collective mastermind, we had one of the businesses that I'm coaching pull up their organizational chart. Now they are jumping on the EOS platform like we have, but I compared their org chart with our org chart. And the org chart is really, really clear. It has the name of the person, the role of the person, and all of the things that that individual does. As the company grows, as the vision is met, then that org chart changes. The individual job responsibility of those people change. But it's really, really important to have the right people, because without the right people, you will never grow the company. Now, the third thing that I always talk to businesses about, including ours, is all great entrepreneurs use a handful, not a lot, of data to run their business. Now, you probably heard the buzzword KPI, or key performance indicators. What data is, or what are the most meaningful things that you need in order to drive a business forward. So for example, in a publishing business, that might be books sold, or it might be how many new authors are publishing books. In a real estate company, it might be occupancy. It might be cash flow based on a return. It might be the number of accredited investors you have. It doesn't really matter, but the data is really, really important. In a social media business, it might be the number of views. It might be the number of people hitting a website, but data is really, really important. And I always find that people that don't have data aren't managing their companies properly. So as I always say, what's measured is managed. If you have something that's measured, you have something to talk about. If you know, for example, how many views you did last week on, let's say, a social media channel, and it's down the following week, you now have a talking point. You could say, why is that? If you're not measuring that, then of course, you're not managing the company or that particular thing. So data is super important. And I always find a lot of times, a lot of entrepreneurs, they overload people with data. In other words, they have 50 or 100 things that they're following with data. That's not what we're talking about here. In my business, I have 3 or 4 big things that I follow from a data standpoint, and that's how I measure whether the company has traction or doesn't have traction. That's how I measure whether a company is moving forward or backwards. The next one are issues, and these are just obstacles that everyone faces that take away from your overall vision. That could be anything that happened from week to week or day to day or month to month. All businesses have issues, and all issues take away from the vision of the business. Here's the good news. In the history of businesses, there has only been a handful of different kinds of issues. The same ones come up over and over again. So once you learn how to master these, because typically they might have different labels on them, they're all generally the same types of issues. Regardless of how long you've been plagued by your problems, the issues and the components inside of those issues represent huge opportunities to move the vision forward. The next one is traction. The most successful business owners that I know are the ones with traction. Those are the businesses that actually move forward without a lot of leadership, because all these processes are in place. The ones that don't move forward are the ones that lack discipline and they lack focus. So after you set all these things up, the ones that don't move forward are the ones that actually lack discipline. In other words, the leadership is not managing the data, the people, the vision, or even the processes. Those are the companies that are stagnant or moving backwards. Vision without traction is purely hallucination, because you need traction in order to move the vision. Processes are the way that you do business. So for example, in our business, as you met earlier, we decided that we wanted to be really philanthropic, which means that we have a full-time director of philanthropy. That is the way we want to do business. We don't just want to make a lot of money. We want to give back to the community. That's the way we like to do business. You will not get your business to the next level by keeping your processes in your head and winging it as you go. This is exactly what most entrepreneurs do. Most entrepreneurs, as they grow, they are the business. Everything funnels through them. And what you're trying to do is take all processes, whatever those might be, and put them down on paper. All processes need to be clearly identified, documented, understood, and followed by everyone in your organization. So an example of a process might be when a new investor interested in investing in our company hits our website for the first time. What's the process of bringing that person through our website, through the legal process, through the accreditation process, through the CPA, into the investment portal? What is the process there? All the way from investor relations, when are they going to call them? When do they email them? Do they come to our annual meeting? All of those things are part of the process just for that one investor journey. So I'm sure some of you are wondering, how do I do all this in 90 minutes? Well, it all starts with this EOS manual, which we do each and every quarter. So our team meets in person every quarter, and then we meet every week for 90 minutes. And then we meet annually to go over all of our goals. So how do you pull off growing, let's say, 1,500 units a year for the next 10 years? How do you pull off buying $1 billion in the next year and a half? Well, that's easy. What you do is you start off with the goal of, let's say, 1,500 units in 1 year. You break it down by 4 quarters, and then you disseminate that information. So, for example, I would say the acquisition guy has to go out and find 8 to 10 deals a week. We got to make 3 or 4 offers a week. And then out of that, hopefully we're investing final at least 1 or 2 a month. And then that turns into 1 or 2 deals a quarter. That's the process. So you just take the math and you break it down into quarterly chunks, and then you assign it to each person on the team. So action is the process of doing, and you got to make your vision a reality. So if everyone is bought into the vision, and I'm meeting with my team every 90 minutes, my partner and I are managing 3 things. The first one is accountability to each person in that 90-minute meeting. The second one is communication, making sure that they all understand that we're moving forward from a traction standpoint. And the third one, of course, is traction, how we're measuring it. If our goal is to buy 15,000 units in 10 years, that means that we're buying 1,500 units a year. If you divide that by 4, well, then of course we have to buy 300 or 400 units every quarter. So over the years, I've had lots of different systems and lots of different processes and lots of different things. But now with the internet and now with AI and all the tools and all the software, it's getting easier and easier and easier. And that's when our company went to EOS. Because with EOS, every department, of course, has the same kinds of goals. So let me give you an example. In my 90-minute meeting, I'll have our CIO, our CEO, our COO, the partners, and the director of marketing, let's say, all on that call each and every Tuesday from 11 o'clock to 12:30. In that meeting, each one of those people have 2 to 3 quarterly goals that they're working on that all roll back up to the vision. So for example, our CIO's job for 12 months is to close 1,500 units. The whole team knows whether or not we're on track or off track. We're either in escrow and closing deals or we're not. It's that simple. And of course, there's always a series of issues that could happen as a result of that. That might be high interest rates. It might be the lenders. It could be equity. It could be we're not finding deals. It doesn't really matter what it is, but the big high data point is that we're trying to close 1,500 units in 1 year. That would land on our CIO. Now, our CFO, of course, in that same meeting, understands that we're raising millions of dollars and we're getting millions of dollars in debt. And those are things that she's going to have on her plate in order to close all of those deals effectively. So she's looking at the cash, she's looking at the bank accounts, she's looking at all the things that we need in order to close the deal. And also in that meeting is our COO, and that's Brian. And he, of course, says if we're going to buy 5 or 6 buildings in 1 year, that means we're going to add, let's say, 50 to 75 employees. And what is that going to take in order to pull all that off? We're going to have to go out and find employees. We have a full-time director of recruitment, as an example. We have an onboarding and a training program for leasing and maintenance and all those things. Now, Brian's going to be in charge of onboarding all those people and getting them set up in the company. So that's our CIO, our COO, and our CFO all working together on the goal of purchasing 1,500 units. Everyone is marching the same direction. And as a visionary, my partner and I are in the middle of making sure that we're hitting those goals. So the big difference of how I run my business now and how I used to run my business is actually people, and accountability. So now what I do is I break down all the individual goals. I put them in 90-day goals and 1-year goals to try to hit our big 10-year goal. I make sure that I'm managing each individual component. On that 90-minute call, I'm basically just keeping everyone accountable. The way we run those meetings is literally, are you on track or off track? And if you're off track, then you float it up to an issue and we talk about it later. In other words, the 90-minute meeting is not a random meeting. It actually has time, and there are things that we do through that period of time. So the very first thing we do is go through our scorecard, our KPIs, and our data. Then we go into our vision. Then we go into our issues, what we call identify, discuss, and solve, or IDS. And each one of those things are discussed by the team. For example, let's say we haven't bought a property in 3 months. What we would do is we would make that an issue. And then we tie that back to the vision and the goal. So the CIO now would be accountable to the whole group to say, this is what I'm experiencing right now. But of course, typically we catch those way before that. But the purpose of the 90-minute meeting is merely to manage the processes, manage the goals that are already set, and manage the vision that everyone's agreed to. That's all the meeting is. And we use data and we use people to pull all that off. As a younger man, I never had all 6 things working, and sometimes I would put them together, but like a lot of young entrepreneurs, I lacked the discipline and the traction to pull them off. So what oftentimes happens is people look at their businesses at the end of the year and see how they've done, whatever it is, and maybe you hit your goals, maybe you don't. And it's actually not as fun for everybody that's involved. When everyone in the company understands what the vision is and everyone is being managed to that vision, then the company moves along in inches. So by managing the company for 90 minutes a week, then everyone has the same priorities. Life hits us all. We get emails, we got health, we got family, we got all these things that take over, and they will take over for all of us from time to time. But if we have a quarterly goal, an annual goal, and our priorities are in order, and we're actually just touching those every 90 minutes each week, then of course we're moving along. And we don't always hit our goals, and that's not the point. The point is that we know what the goal is and that we can hit it the next quarter. We always re-examine as a company where we're heading, and everybody needs vision and a process and a priority, and that's the only way to manage all these different folks. Then, of course, all of that vision becomes a reality for everyone, and everyone wins. During the 2020 lockdowns, I looked under the hood of my company and realized we were making major mistakes. We were only running on 4 of 8 cylinders. Within 2 years, we've completely turned it around. If you want to see how I did that, just watch this video here.